Okay, I'm going to just show you the tools in Illustrator. What you see here is the artboard, and we got a vector graphic here. It's a red rectangle with a black stroke. Okay, the fill, which is red, is located up here, and you can, of course, change the color however you like. And the stroke, which is the outline, you can also change the color on that. I can make it brown if I wanted to, or green. I'll make it black. And with it selected, you can change the size right up here. Stroke can be bigger, you can see it's growing, or it can be smaller. Tools. First tool is up here, and I'm going to undock this so you can see it right next to where we're working. First tool is the selection tool. It's this black arrow, and that selects the entire shape, or object as it's called in Illustrator. If you want to select specific parts of a vector shape, you select the direct selection tool. And what this does is it allows you to select the anchor points, or the paths that make a specific shape. Just to reiterate what we're dealing with vector shapes. So vector shapes are made up of anchor points and paths. To select them with the selection tool, or the direct selection tool, I'm sorry, you click it once and then click it again. To select the whole thing, you can see now the bounding box is still there, and I can change the scale of that object if I want to. Next tool I'm going to have you deal with is the pen tool. And what the pen tool does is it creates anchor points and paths. And I'll demonstrate here. If I click once, click again, it's going to make a path. And notice that these anchor points are pointed, meaning that they're just going to be very hard geometric. If you want them to be a curved geometric, known as a Bezier curve, you click and drag, and then you can pull out these little handles here. You have two different types of anchor points. You have an anchor point that is a curved anchor point, and you have an anchor point that is a square anchor point. One way to deal with this and change them is to select one with this direct selection tool, the white arrow. You click it once, and you can come up here, and I can change this curve to a corner. I can also do the same to this one here, change it to a corner. Or if I want to, click this anchor point and change that to a curve. Within the pen menu, you can click, drag out to the right, and you have add an anchor point tool, which allows me to click on a path and add more anchor points. If I click and drag out to the right, I have a delete anchor point tool, which allows me to delete anchors. Lastly, I have a convert anchor point tool, which does exactly what this button up here does. It's just a faster way to do it. Next tool is the type tool, but you'll see about that in the next tutorial, Illustrator demo number 2. You also have a line tool. It's just a simple way to create a line, click and pull out. I also have a number of shape primitive tools: rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, and flare. I'll show you something cool with the star tool here. If you click and pull out, and without releasing the mouse, click up or down with the arrows, you can make this into any sort of number of stars you want. This doesn't have a fill, it just has a stroke, and let me demonstrate. If I use my selection tool, notice how the whole shape is selected. I can come up here and I can select fill and tell it to be blue. And of course I can select the stroke and tell it to be red if I want to. You can always just select an entire shape and delete it. Next tool is the eraser tool. It's different than it is in Photoshop. First of all, if I double click on it, I can change the diameter of it, and of course I can change the orientation. What it wants to do is create new paths. So let me select this shape, select that tool, and with it selected you could see what it's trying to do. For the eraser tool to work, you have to have the object selected, but what it does is it just redraws the paths, and you can see what it's doing is it's creating new anchor points and a new path. Okay, next tool is the gradient tool. And what the gradient tool does is allow us to change the type of fill we have on an object. Okay, from over here, I have a selection of different types of gradients. For now, I'm just going to click a linear gradient. And you can see that changes that to a gradient. With the gradient tool selected, you see you have sliders here that can be moved around, and you can change the type of gradient you have. You can also click and drag like this and change the orientation of that gradient however you like. You're also going to want to be aware of your gradient palette, and that's located right here. This and this tool work hand in hand. So say I didn't want a black to white gradient, I can always, from my swatches palette over here, pull out red and drop it in on top of that black. And maybe take yellow and drop it in just before that white. You can also change the sliders here. You can see that's reflected here on this gradient tool, and you can also change them here. Maybe I just wanted to go that way. Next menu I want to show you is the stroke menu. So if I select this object, I can always change my stroke here in this stroke palette. Remember, you have to have the object selected that you want to alter. You can change the types of strokes that you have on here. You can have them mitered or not. Let's miter them. And you can also, in this, create dashed lines. So with that stroke selected, I changed it to a dashed line. I'm going to take my selection tool and select off of the object. In Illustrator, this is important if you want to create a new shape. Click off of it somewhere in the artboard or off of the artboard. If I take my line tool and stretch it out here, you can see I have dashed line still checked. If I don't want it to be a dashed line, I can just uncheck that dashed line. So this stroke palette manages whatever stroke you have selected or are going to create if you set presets within it. The eyedropper tool is the next tool I want to show you. That's right here, and basically all this does is exactly what you would think. It selects whatever color you are selecting. Let's make a new shape. Okay, and I'm going to change that to blue. And maybe I want to create another shape over here. And maybe I want that shape to be a different color. I can always just go somewhere within my Illustrator document and select a color, and it tells me, okay, you selected a linear gradient and also a gradient with an outline. Last tool I'm going to show you here is the hand tool. Basically, you can just press down the space bar and that moves the artboard around. And that's really handy, especially when you're in very close or far away to an object and you want to move very quickly over from one place to another. You can also access that tool by clicking on the hand tool here or hitting the hotkey H.